Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is Kevin McPherson. I'll be your host today on HogvilleNET YouTube Live, just like the day before and the day before that. You get the same host every time. We try to change up what we talk about. Obviously, some of the stuff, it's common talking points until they're not as we move along, especially this time of year. But what I started yesterday, and something I want to continue with, is talking about a player dynamic on this current, what I consider a true 8-player, two deep rotation for the Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball team going into year 2 under John Calipari. Talk about a player dynamic and then kind of wrap that into one of the top matchups on the upcoming schedule, which could end up being the toughest schedule, start to finish, non-conference plus SEC plus any postseason you have. Toughest in school history. I always talk about the 94-95 season, how that's going to be really difficult to top, but this one just could be sizing up that way. And what I did yesterday, we started off talking about Carter Knox being back on campus again. And then I tied that into the matchup against Kentucky, which I think right now still stands as the big numero uno matchup for Arkansas next year among plenty of games you could make the case for. But because it's Kentucky, because it's Calipari and it's year 2, and now you get him at Bud. And I talked about the big matchup. The centerpiece of your team might be Carter Knox. And the big matchups, Kentucky centerpiece, which is Atega Owe. And we kind of started from there and looked at how the teams match up. We went through more than just that. So in a similar vein, we're going to do that again today with a different player group and different matchup. And the one I would bill as the second most important as it looks right now on the schedule. But we're also going to get a little bit into Adu Thiero, Calipari's first Arkansas player who will be tested in this upcoming draft in terms of can Calipari keep the streak alive. 17 consecutive seasons with at least one first rounder. Last year he had 2 lottery picks in the previous draft coming off his last season at Kentucky. And so we look to see if Adu Thiero, who's the lone hog that's in this draft in terms of someone that can actually looks like will be drafted, because we don't expect Nelly Davis or Jonas Adu to be drafted. But to see if Thiero can continue that streak, or does he slide a little bit into the second round? We're going to go through some of what the mock drafts have to say about that, and a couple of the NBA scouts that are my sources that I've spoken with about this and Adu Thiero's prospects. Now, the NBA draft will be Wednesday and Thursday, so they've split up. It's only 2 rounds, but they've split it up where the first round's on Wednesday, and then the second round will be Thursday, and so that's tomorrow and the following day. And so we'll be talking more about this as the draft plays out. So we'll finish with that today. But just jumping into this, the lead that I put on my tweet to announce that we were coming on today, and by the way, the intention was to come on really early again. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my really long days on the road. I had to move some stuff around. And so I'm a little bit in and out today, and I had to come on later. Otherwise, I was going to have to come on at 4 a.m., and nobody wanted that. So I put it middle afternoon. So thank you for joining me. If you were wondering what happened earlier, that's what happened. All right, so let's get right into it. In the lead up to this, I kind of teased this idea that Acuff and DJ are like a 1-1 combo, kind of a 1-1 dynamic. And you usually hear about, when you're talking about 2 players, it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. If you're looking at that standpoint, even if it's a positional group, or maybe another dynamic, kind of like that 1-2 combo. Or if you're talking about a player like DJ that comes into this season, I guess, as a combo guard, a 1/2. But I really, until I see differently from DJ, he was not impressive to me as a 2 guard, especially when you look at Arkansas' struggles last year when Boogie was still healthy. You had, when they were on the court together, you had Nelly Davis at the 3. He was really a 2. You had Carter Knox as a true freshman, still trying to figure things out. And, it was just kind of awkward how they were mixing and matching there that way. And now you come into year 2 and you don't have Boogie Flynn anymore. You've got Darius Acuff Jr., another McDonald's All-American 5-star guy that might end up being your leading scorer and kind of sharing top billing. We'll see how it plays out. But just projecting ahead, is it a stretch to think of Darius Acuff Jr., one version of the National High School Player of the Year, top 5 ranked according to just about everybody, including the All-American teams postseason, a stretch to think he and a Carter Knox are kind of the 1-2 in terms of, who are going to be the centerpieces of this team. And so you bring in another dynamic lead guard and DJ now in year 3, and that's really the strength of his game. even though he's not, the picturesque lead guard. There's no perfect one, but the one thing about Boogie Flam before he got hurt was, despite Arkansas's record, was how splendid his assist to turnover ratio was. And it's not just about ratios. I mean, he was one of the leaders in the SEC in the country in assists per game. He was Arkansas's second leading scorer. And at the time he got hurt, he was doing a fair job shooting from behind the 3-point line. So Acuff comes in with his own game and his own strengths. But here's what I think is interesting about this duo. Given the circumstances of what played out last year and seeing what DJ is more comfortable with being a ball dominant guard, it begs the question, because I think they're going to start games on the court together with Acuff at the 1, DJ at the 2, and we'll see what the rotations look like from there. Calipari at times last year started subbing in his first substitutes, his first reserve players, before the first time out at the under 4-minute mark. Or excuse me, the under 16-minute mark, just 4 minutes into the game. And so to me, there's going to be kind of like a shuffling of the deck. Acuff and DJ to start games, maybe Acuff the primary ball handler, DJ at the 2, and then you come in with another 5-star freshman guard, Malik Thomas, at one of the first check-ins, maybe he or Billy Richmond the 3rd, because I've got Carter Knox slotted as the starter, obviously, at the 3. And then you just kind of shuffle guys in and out in your backcourt, based on different needs, whether it's early foul trouble, just to get a guy a blow, just to get another look. We'll see how that plays out. But initially, and we've talked about this, when I look at the strength of this team on paper, when I look at the talent, when I look at the roster build, when I look at the retention, everything to me says on paper, this team has a chance to be a final weekend team. It certainly looks like being on the first weekend team, getting back to a Sweet 16, potentially an Elite 8 in that second weekend, and then who knows after that on paper. But I think when we look at question marks, it's been shooting. We've beaten that horse to death. We'll talk more about it. We're not done beating it, because I don't think they necessarily addressed it. Love the type of competition. Yeah, love this type of competition. Thank you for that comment. So we're talking 3-point shooting in depth at the 4, but what some of the other outlying question marks, if we don't consider them to be necessarily weaknesses, are a big question mark is how do DJ and Acuff interact when they're on the court together? Is there a visible difference in Arkansas's quality of play when one goes out and the other one's out there playing with a Malik Thomas or another grouping? And you're, it's not just about guards and wings. I mean, some of these guys in their 2-man game at the lead guard with your big players, whether it's Trevor Brazile popping after a pick or Malik Ewan, you have a variety of things you can do with him in 2-man game. Nick Pringle, a strong screener and hard roll guy. You're going to figure out even how your guards interact with some of these bigs and how these personnel packages work best. But just in general, it's a question mark. How are these two going to coexist? Is there a drain on the effectiveness of the others? Last year there was. I think it was less about Boogie Fland and anything he was doing wrong. I don't think he got enough credit as a defender. He was one of Arkansas's steal leaders, and he was a really good offensive player. He got hurt, and then those SEC games where you start 0-5, he's not knocking down shots. But remember, he didn't get hurt when you went 0-5 and then he didn't play anymore. He actually got hurt in your 3rd game in league play against Florida at home before you then went on the road and lost to LSU and Missouri. So I thought he was, maybe too many fingers pointed at, well, that was the simple answer. You subtract him from the equation and the team got much better. No, we said it all along. Guys were forced into their more natural positions now by way of attrition. And that, by some subtraction, is why things improved. But you're back to the dynamic of having 2 lead guards. It's just hard for me to really call DJ a combo for various reasons. Looking at him as a 2. He's not particularly a sharpshooter. He's probably underwater when we look at him percentage-wise, a 30% shooter for a backcourt player. You'd like to see more there. Even as a lead guard, he will be a setup guy. He will facilitate, but he has trouble taking care of the basketball. And so there's a assist-to-turnover ratio issue there from his last season in Arkansas. So there are question marks here. It's a very good college player. You can't just put players into little buckets of, okay, you're a lead guard. That means if you're not having a great assist-to-turnover ratio or you're not the best 3-point shooter, you don't have a positive impact. Not true. We know he had a very positive impact. Some of it was defensively. Some of it was these big second halves he would explode for. Forget the statistics. Forget the efficiency. He'd put combos together. Some of Arkansas's biggest wins, the guy went off in second halves. So there's, you don't just formalize, okay, this guy's not this because of these things. But at the same time, it's a valid concern about the duality here at the one. And so I just wonder about that in combination with when you add up the three players who you're effectively turn to for your 1 and 2 play. Now we put Malik Thomas in there. Two of those players have not played a minute of college basketball. Boogie Fland hit the ground running. I think Darius Acuff Jr. will too. To some extent, we're going to see positives and good things out of Malik Thomas, maybe sooner rather than later, and maybe he's more consistent than I'm willing to acknowledge right now, not knowing enough about it. But DJ's the only one with college experience in that group, and you've got him in a tweener situation again starting out. He's in that tweenie role. You're going to be on the court with this guy. Y'all really both kind of play the same position. The difference here too is Boogie and DJ were vastly different the way I looked at those two. Acuff, to me, and DJ may have more similarities. Both, their best offense is getting to the basket, getting into a little runner, floater, get all the way, get as close as they can to the rim. I don't know that I think Acuff's going to take his share of threes, but efficiency-wise, he's more comparable to a DJ. They're both strongly built, that kind of that tank build for a smaller player, 6'3" and under. I know they list DJ at 6'4". He looks 6'3" to me, but they're both put together well, strong-looking dudes, and they can play strong. So there's that element to it, which, again, we don't know how and when these guys are going to click exactly until we see it. So it's just a question right now. I'm not saying, gloom and doom, this looks like a problem. No, I'm identifying something that based on partly what happened last year, but also strengths and weaknesses of individual players. How is that really going to work? And then you get the youth factor, again, around DJ, Acuff, and Malik Thomas. At least you had Nelly Davis once they figured out he was better at the two with just DJ. That's all you had left at the lead guard, really. Billy Richmond III gave you a few minutes off the bench here and there as a primary handler and offense initiator, but really it was mostly DJ at that point. He played a ton of minutes. So the reason I talk about all that now and really going into that and the question marks, how are these guys going to complement each other? The lack of experience, because there was a lot of retention on this roster, but it doesn't, relative to other teams, and you're returning, nearly, between 45 and 50% of last season's scoring and over 50% of the minutes, and you're among the leaders in the country, not just the SEC, and those kind of retention numbers. But positional group, got a lot of inexperience in that backcourt. Whereas last year you had DJ, a second-year college player, and Nelly Davis, who was a veteran guy, an all-everything kind of guy coming out of the mid-major level. And the reason I bring that up in this segment to then talk about the second most important game on the schedule to me right now is Arkansas and Florida. And what we said when Florida got Boogie Fland and when they got Alex Condon to drop out of the draft, the frontline guy, who might have been a late first-round value, and comes back to Florida. And now the talking points go from Florida being in that pecking order of the top 3 or 4 teams mentioned in the SEC to likely being preseason pick to win the SEC, and even a top 3, 4, 5 team nationally when you look at preseason projections. And so we shift into this question mark about Arkansas's backcourt, because I said all along, even with the addition of Boogie, but getting Condon back, that Florida has got an all-world front line. Again, they got everybody back. Alex Condon, the Howell kid that played, was kind of like their sixth man last year. They got Hanlon back, who was a starter once upon a time until he got hurt the season before. He came back late last year. And then they got Chinyelu, who's also, a force and a starter. So they got 4 big bodies, 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet, that are all really, really good on that front line. And it's so weird. I've described that front line. It's not just how individually good they are, but how well they complement the backcourt players in Todd Golden's system. It's one of the reasons I picked Florida much higher last year than anybody else in the preseason that I remember. I had them picked pretty highly, top 4 in the SEC, and with the potential to be even better than that. But that front line play, it's interesting. When I watch the way their bigs move, they are probably the most impressive proactive movement, footwork, angles, timing. They have the best proactive footwork I've seen at the college level. It reminds me of NBA play with big men. They're very proactive, and that proactivity and how they do everything, setting picks, rolling off, anticipating where shots are going at once it leaves a hand to get to a rebound position, ready to follow up a teammate's miss, and how they're just so proactive because they're so good at it. If plan A doesn't work out, it allows them to be even better in reactionary play. So the proactive part sets them up for really good reactionary follows. So it just kind of goes hand in hand. It snowballs. The big question marks are in the backcourt. You lost Walter Clayton Jr., the other two guards, Elijah Martin and Will Richard. Denzel Aberdeen off the bench, off to Kentucky. He'll be a starter there. So your top four guards are gone. And you got a lot of question marks in the backcourt. That's why I said I'm not even sold that Florida should be the preseason pick for anything. It makes sense why they would be. They're coming off a national title. Todd Golden seems to have things figured out, but he had a veteran backcourt, guys that had been with him. Elijah Martin being a transfer from Florida Atlantic like Nellie Davis was to Arkansas. But other than that, he had veteran guys back there who'd been around for a minute. So this is much different. Boogie Flan, fully healthy, is an all-league talent. Xavier Lee, the transfer from the Ivy League, a really good player, was a coveted guy out of the portal, but he's year one under Golden at Florida and playing with brand new players. Kalabjar, the international guard that played sparingly about 10 minutes a game, he's back. He was playing off the bench as well. He was kind of the fifth option there. But there's a lot of question marks there. It's not like Arkansas's retention where everybody factored into a Sweet 16 run and a potential Elite Eight almost got there. This is different with a guy like Kalabjar. He wasn't that important to that team. I'm not going to say he had no impact, but you're still in an exploratory phase with him. So just to throw that out there, they got a really talented freshman coming in, Alex Lloyd, who I covered multiple times in person at the high school level, who was a 4-star. And I thought he showed some 5-star quality, 6'4" guard, athletic, can shoot the lights out, nice dribble craft, really good player. I think he's going to be a hell of a college player. We'll see. So they've got talent. They got a 4 deep there. When you look at it from that standpoint in those names I mentioned, I think they have another transfer from Ohio. So they've got more in terms of depth than the way Arkansas now constructs its roster under Calipari. Unless he adds somebody late, and we're still at a player watch, right? They're at 14. I keep saying I think they're attempting at least to identify what works to get to 15. The biggest need looks like depth on the front line at the 4 spot. Shooting is certainly one. Another guard wouldn't bother me. We'll see how it plays out. I think because they're not in urgent emergency mode to fill that spot, they could still call it a wrap and shift Aiden Kelly over from student manager to being another walk-on back of the bench, into the bench kind of guy to help in practices and whatnot and get you to 15 for a second consecutive season. But having said all that, the way it's constructed now, you look at Arkansas and its retention, it's kind of throughout. They've got retention with DJ Wagner in the backcourt. They're loaded at retention at the wing with Knox and Billy Richmond III. They've got Trevor Brazile back on the front line. And they've got veteran pieces out of the portal in the front line and Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle that bring a combination of positives that Arkansas didn't necessarily have last year. You looks like you forgo some rim protection to bolster yourself in other areas. More polish offensively, a better passer in Ewan, a strong rebounder though. You look at Nick Pringle, an enforcer. Arkansas didn't really have that last year, and he's been an enforcer in the SEC. He's not going to be bashful matching up with Florida's front line. We'll see about Malik Ewan by the time you're in that part of the season. Trevor Brazile looked all world in the last 9 games, but he's been around. This is for year 4 at Arkansas, and it's been more famine than feast. Let's just say it like it is. So we got to see what proves out here. But beyond that, you don't go 4 deep on the front line like Florida. And although you have a returning guard in DJ Wagner, your other 2 central focal points at the 1 and 2 are 2 true freshmen, first-year college players. Florida's got all newcomers in the backcourt effectively, other than Kalabjar, but 2 of those guys have college experience. So there's a lot of question marks for both backcourt. So we know Arkansas is a one-off this year playing at Florida. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. Arkansas is going to be preseason top 10, top 15. We'll see who they are by that time of the year. We know they'll be battle-tested based on that grueling, unprecedented non-conference slate. Again, I compare it to the 94-95 season. When we look at how teams are ranked and projected and what they did the year before and getting to the Final Four, Elite Eight, and Sweet 16, on paper, it will look more impressive than that 94-95 team. 94, 95, again, 8 non-conference opponents were either ranked high majors or went to the Sweet 16 or beyond in the postseason of that same season. This will look a little different. More ranked teams and more brand names that you've seen and are aware of. But at the end of the day, it should prep Arkansas for a tough SEC play going on the road, where you hope the retention and now being in your second year under new management and because Calipari is not new to the SEC, you're hoping that gives you a chance on the road. Remember, Auburn was the number one team for a long time, leading the SEC, had a lead and ended up being the regular season champ. And Arkansas goes on the road and gives itself a chance to win in that game. So we'll see if Arkansas is that kind of team where game in and game out, no matter how good the competition is, they're positioned to be the winner at the end. Florida, again, will be the preseason pick to win the SEC, and you're playing on the road. So I look at this and I say, okay, advantage Florida. Yesterday, Arkansas hosted Kentucky. I gave the reasons. I said it's a home game. I think Arkansas's top 8 is better than a deeper Kentucky's team top 8. And for reasons given, Arkansas advantage. I'm going to flip it today. I think it's advantage Florida. We're not predicting scores or outcomes yet. We're just still in June. But I look at everything, and I think the question marks at both teams' backcourts are valid until they're not. And I give the edge to Florida's front court, a front court that's back intact, the same one that last year was, in concert with a deep veteran backcourt to win it all. And they didn't win the SEC regular season title, but what they did do was go on the road and beat Auburn on the road in the regular season. Then they won the SEC tournament, then they won the national championship. So it's a loaded front court. It's in their house. Advantage Florida. All right, let's move on. We're 22 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're kind of blending player talk, roster talk, what we have. Hey, if we're in hold, we're on hold, waiting to see if they fill the 15th spot. Probably a back end depth or a too deep depth piece, but back end of the too deep, not back end outside the top 8 or 9. If you add one, then you'd be at a top 9 maybe. Maybe they add somebody that's more like the back end stuff, more developmental or walk-on type. Again, we mentioned Aiden Kelly is kind of a plan B there. If you can't get a new body in or choose not to, it can play any way. But based on what we know, we're going through the roster, and then we're kind of looking at matchups in your schedule for next season. It won't all be talking about how Arkansas's players fit against SEC teams. We're going to talk some non-conference opponents as well. I'm kind of going in order of how I see the most important games. You could say league games are always more important, but when you look at quad 1 win opportunities, stacking your neutral site and away from home wins, and overall quality of some of the teams you're going to play, that's what also matters. That to me matters even more than your final league record. It just so happens that it's 2 league teams that I think start out as your top 2 games based on just how I view it. The next time we come on, it's probably going to be a non-conference opponent that we talk about. But we're also always going to talk somewhat about question marks or strengths of the roster and players, our position groups, and then we'll transition into some of the matchups and how those guys might match up once you get into this game at this point. I mean, Acuff-DJ and Malik Thomas, a lot of youth in there, one veteran guy. You got some veteran guys that's all new at Florida, but the 3,000-pound gorilla that I didn't even bring up, we're almost 25 minutes in, is Acuff and Boogie matching up. They did it in high school when Boogie was a senior at Stepinac, and Acuff, was a junior at IMG Academy, and that was a battle. They went back and forth, and both did their thing. You got Malik Thomas coming in, and of course, DJ and Boogie being teammates last year, they'll be guarding each other at times. You got Malik Thomas again as a 5-star freshman guard with all kinds of looking ahead NBA potential. And how does he show up in some of these games? By that time, he'll have cut his teeth and been through some wars. And so you just wonder how all that dynamic, which backcourt group comes out ahead. Maybe that's what decides that game. Again, I've given the reasons why I give the edge to Florida right now because there are a lot of unknowns there. All right, let's talk Adu Thiero before we get out of here. Looking at the most recent drafts, mock drafts yesterday. Now, these are updating all the time because the draft's almost here. So I did not have time today rushing back here to do this. Then I've got to get back on the road. But looking at late last night is when I collected this stuff. This is where the draft, when you look at mock drafts, where Adu Thiero, he's been measured out at 6'6", so they're going to list him as 6'6" at the pro level, and right around 220 pounds. But Adu Thiero, the athletic, and Sam Vicini has him going. This is the worst position I've seen projected for him. Again, this came out last night. Has him going 40th. So that's the last pick of the early, what's considered early second round. Picks 30 through 40 are considered early second round. You can call it mid if you want, but mid is 41 through 50, and then 51 through 59 or 58. How many picks they're doing this year? Teams get in trouble for tampering and other things. You should have 60 picks, but for the last several years it's been 58, 57, whatever. But that's kind of how it breaks down. But the Athletic has him going 40th. You see several here, Sporting News, the Ringer, each had him going at 30th. And so that's the last pick of the first round. You have ESPN and Jonathan Givony and Jeremy Wu combining on their mock that was updated last night. They have him going 34th to Charlotte. Charlotte, as it stands now, I think has back-to-back picks 33 and 34. We know Nick Smith Jr., obviously, unless something happens with a trade or something else interesting, will be in his third season in Charlotte. But you got ESPN projecting Adu Thiero at number 34, so early second round. I think that was the exact spot that Jalen Williams in the 2022 draft was picked by Oklahoma City, and his guaranteed 2 years, the first 2 years were guaranteed for $4 million spread out over those 2 years. So that's better than the NIL money than Adu Thiero would have gotten had he come back to Arkansas. Absolutely. And then you're closer again to maybe shaking and breaking that second contract and moving right along. So number 34, according to ESPN, no ceilings, which is they've been putting out mocks and going through their mocks. They have him at number 27th. So that, late first round. I mentioned a couple of Sporting News and the Ringer having to do at the end of the first round, the 30th pick, no ceilings at number 27. Remember, no ceilings also had Carter Knox projected. I think they had him in the low 30s. And no one else had a projection for him. Everybody knew he was coming back to school. So take it with a grain of salt. I saved the best projection for last because I qualified why. I didn't want to just leave it out, but I want to qualify it. They had Carter Knox going in the in the early 30s, if I remember correctly. And so that was interesting. They don't have him now, by the way. They did their homework and understand Carter Knox about a month ago went back to school. All right, so those are some of the mocks, and this is the area of projections this close to it where you're like, okay, it makes sense why Adu passed up a significant raise. We always said retention mattered most, and that's what the focal point of the staff was in this recruiting and building this roster. Retention's part of recruiting, and they filled in around it, but it started with retention, and they had a handsome, just a beautiful retention offer for Adu Thiero. But these projections, he was probably getting the kind of feedback he needed to stay in. He may even have a draft guarantee. I've been told he does. Remember, I have a source that says he does in the second round that would be commensurate with at least a 2-year guarantee with some good, which would reflect enough money to be better than NIL. But they wouldn't tell me where that guarantee is. Remember? So he could have more than that one. But my feeling is that by a combination of all the feedback and any guarantees that he had, he knew it was going to land maybe somewhere where we're seeing it now with some of the mocks. Weird things happen on draft night. It's not always lands like you might think it will. And I talked to 2 NBA scouts that have done their homework, and they continue to do their homework. One scout is affiliated and directly linked. Some teams, by the way, some teams don't have scouts that are on staff. They either farm it out or they have other ways that they evaluate. Some of the teams do, and some of the top teams absolutely do have staff scouts. And one I talked to and have for years is with the same organization, and he's on staff as a scout. So talking to him, and then I talked to agency scout. Agencies also have scouts, not just based on trying to figure out who they can represent, but figure out the quality of the player, where they might go. They do all the same. It's similar, not exactly the same, but it's very similar, and they're projecting as well. So 2 different scouts. The one scout has not been bullish on Adu Thiero from the beginning. He's always said, at best a 40 to end of draft range. He figures, 45 is probably, a gun to his head where he would So yeah, that's where I have this guy. He's not changed on that. The lack of skill bugs him, but he did tell me, look, the athleticism, the body, the way that some teams, what their needs are and how they like to build, they see. I doubt that he slips that far. That's what he said. I doubt he slips to 45. And he says, will it surprise me if he slips to 45? No, but I doubt it. I doubt it now. He's hard enough to think it'll be early second round, is what he said. And I said, so no late first round? He goes, all it takes is one team. He goes, I can't speak to that, maybe. But he goes, really, probably early second round and before 45. So that's where one of them is. The other scout has him similarly. He says early second round. He said he goes, don't be shocked if he slips a little bit and it's mid 40s. He goes, but don't be shocked if he's taken late first round. So that's where the other scout, it lines up pretty well with what they think will happen with some of these mocks. It doesn't necessarily line up with how they personally valued and evaluated that player. That's different from person to person. Some, what is it? What did Jim Carrey say as the Grinch and the in the Grinch movie he made? One man's toxic waste is another man's potpourri. So it's one of those things, right? The draft's a crapshoot. For the most part, it really is. You look back on these things later and go, wow, what did they not know? Or someone knew something. It's always one of those things. All right, 31 and a half minutes in. Of course, we're going to talk more about it tomorrow when we come back on. Don't know yet what time, but we're going to talk more roster personnel stuff. We're going to transition that into a matchup and probably going to be a non-conference opponent tomorrow. We're going to talk again a little bit about Thiero, maybe update the mocks and see if they've changed really at all, at least touch on the fact that the draft starts tomorrow night and that, Calipari, I mentioned the streak, 17 consecutive years he's had a first-round pick. And again, last year, 2 lottery picks. So when you look at it from that standpoint, is that streak broken? And if it is broken, it doesn't look like it'll be by much. But, it's not like you say, okay, 17 consecutive years plus an early second-round pick. That's not how people frame things. And the haters out there will jump all over it if Calipari doesn't have a first-round pick as some evidence of something. I'm not buying it. Now, we don't spend a lot of time on here commiserating over what the cheap seat shots are that come out. We know Jeff Goodman never been crazy about Arkansas, never been crazy about coaches at Arkansas, and that beef is old. And Big Blue Nation, the back and forth, we reference it a little bit. We don't talk a whole lot about it because this isn't TMZ. I'm here to hopefully talk more about substantive things as we look at this stuff. But at the end of the day, we're keeping an eye on that brand and that track record. And, those are things that, believe me, will be used in recruiting. And so, you'd love to see a Thiero slip into that into first round. But if it's early second round, good for him. Good decision by him. And then you deal with it after that. A whole lot more for Calipari to sell in his track record than one draft. But anyway, thank you for being here with me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Lots to talk about tomorrow. We're going to get into all of it. I appreciate all of you. If something breaks that's urgent, like a player ad or, Arkansas is going to play the Oklahoma City Thunder in an exhibition game, we're coming back on and going live. But if not, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. We appreciate and love all of you. We'll see you soon.